Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Our show today is Coexistence and Sustainability with Pet Psychic Aminah. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I am your host today, and our show has a really fabulous and really pertinent topic for all of you out there who are pet owners or considering getting a pet, or maybe you're taking care of a pet for someone else. The topic is pet mental health, how to keep your pet happy and stress-free. Joining me is the star of our show, Pet Psychic Aminah. She is in California in the great US of A. Let's welcome her to the program. Hello.
Hello. And you have to give me the cues. Everybody, where do we go? Middle of the sun, half of the trees.
Wherever you want. It's a moving environment.
Exactly. God forbid we talk and use our hands and all that kind of stuff, because our topics are amazing. So thank you. I really appreciate you. You're hitting the nail on what everybody's always asking me or always would love to corner me. I've been cornered in a few grocery stores. It's like, but I just have one question. Okay, let's go look at the apples. Here we go.
It's always one that leads to many, but I think it's important because sometimes I've heard from people who are not really pet people. For example, I don't know what a pet person is, but someone who's maybe afraid of pets, right, that they don't think that animals really have a personality. And of course, that's not even true. Today, there was knocking on the glass door and it was a very large iguana. And I looked at it and I thought, there's something in there. That is a live being, a live entity who said, it's 100 degrees outside. Let me come in.
Exactly. You got a shower? It's free.
Is there any water anywhere nearby? Because as you know, as you've told me many times, is that all animals need water.
Humanity doesn't understand. Every time we poison something, and whatever that means, you decide to clean your paint down the gutter, that's not good, because that's all toxic stuff, and it doesn't biodegrade and it doesn't go away. And people say, oh, well, I'll just leave these leaves here and they'll be done. Oh yeah, in 6 months, 2 years, 752 days. You got to keep in mind, when you have that soda drink, and this drives me crazy, and they just heave it into the bushes or whatever. Oh, somebody else will pick it up. Oh, so who's somebody else?
Right. What about when people just dumping trash out of the car window? Just
exactly. And people have actually been hit by the flying leaves, much less you throwing something outside. And it's life and death for the person that's just gotten accosted by a lid.
Exactly. So, Pet Psychic Aminah, you've extensive experience when it comes to pets, whether it's training pets or whether it's speaking on pets or whether it's helping people communicate with their pets. Can you give us a little bit of your background about what it is that you feel is the most important thing when a person is considering buying a pet, rescuing a pet, whatever means by which maybe they got a pet from their kids don't want it, whatever it might be. What's the most important, significant thing?
Remember that they all have a right to live. They have a right to be fed. If they're captive in your aquarium and it's a snake or a lizard, or you got your cat or your dog, you have the responsibility because they don't open doors really well. They can be taught. Don't get me wrong. I'm not even going to get there because I don't need anybody going and putting that together. But dogs need to go out for walks. Cats need time to sleep a lot. And everything else in between. If your house is too chaotic, your children are too small to understand, don't pull my ear, don't pull my hair. I can't tell you how many animals in the shelters, returned or not, will come back with an ear that flops down because somebody grabbed them by the ear. And it's like, but they were going to get hurt. Grab a piece of cardboard, get a whistle, for goodness sake. That'll scare everybody, and at least get them to stop. It's the same true for children as it is for animals. Don't pull their tails. I have seen too many where what happens is the tail will separate, and the nerve damage that happens is unrecuperable. 99% of the time, that tail will never pick up again. And we actually adopted one years and years ago. He just drug it around on the ground. It was really muddy and dirty because, it was an indoor cat, but still it was dragging all the fur everywhere. And can you imagine having your hand, your limb, your elbows, and you don't know where they are or what they're doing because you can't feel them anymore? God forbid you slice your arm open and everybody goes, wait, you're bleeding. And they're like, well, I don't know that because you can't feel it anymore. Think about that in animals. What I encourage you and almost beg you to do is, if you don't like it, don't have your pets go through it either. If you don't like cigarette smoke, then why would you want to have your pets around that? It's their lungs too.
That's right. They're part of the family. They're part of the community. And so they need to be considered as well. So what are some things that might upset a pet? Let's talk about dogs. And then
loud noises. You know this, especially with the smaller breeds. It's just terrifying because they don't know what it is. They don't know how to make it stop. And it's secretive because it's hiding somewhere. In their world, it is. This is a pin. This is a piece of paper. They of course don't have any of that. I'm using an example. You could bring a piece of paper in front of them and they could smell it. And they go, okay, I don't know what mom and dad want me to do with that, but I know it exists. But sounds, music, background. Now, can an animal learn it? Sure. Let's say you have records, like, round ones, and you put them on the stereo. An animal can see that, and then the music starts. But can you imagine trying to explain a radio or a stereo they don't see, or on and on and on? If you can't see it, can't touch it, can't smell it, how are you going to prove that it exists for something that doesn't have that in their world, in their life? That's the question. When you are introducing your animals into anything new, you're moving, or you're gonna move, and they need to get used to the car. Guess what? It's car riding day, so they get used to the rhythm and that nothing happens. And of course, please keep them in a travel cage. Dr. Jacalyn, do you know why I'm so adamant about you got to keep them in a cage in the car?
Yes, just like people, we have to wear seatbelts to keep them safe.
Thank you. That's exactly what I could have paid you for that one. Oh, that's right, I did. I love it because a seatbelt is the same as having a carrying cage that you take your animal to the vet, or you're taking them to grandma's house or whatever. Guess what? You could put pillows in there. I don't recommend food or water unless it's a really, really long trip. Have somebody sit next to them so he can put a little dish of water in, because animals get dehydrated really fast. They're little bitty bodies. And straws are not an option. So remember, you need to keep them safe. Strap your carrier down. Now, when I was moving my German Shepherd around, that wasn't hard to do. It was a huge cage that I had to move him around in. Little tiny cat, not appropriate on somebody's lap. That person, God forbid you get hit, or a landslide, or for whatever reason, the car gets damaged. And you've got your child holding the cat or dog, and they're both just crushed in the seat. That doesn't have to happen. You can keep the pet close, but that's where a lot of seatbelts come in. And there are straps you can add to your seatbelt for pets, like the ones that go through the chest. So they disseminated the weight, and it's not just one arm, it's not one leg, it's not one tail, it's mostly the chest. And then your animal, especially a dog, is going to get used to that because good, they're sitting next to their people on that second seat. I don't recommend front seat ever. Dr. Jacalyn, what would be the reason I would never recommend a pet be in the front seat?
Because they could go out the window.
And the airbags will get them there faster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you probably know this, that there's so many people that literally get their face broken by airbags. So they're doing a much better job than they were doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when people were getting black eyes and all kinds of damage from the airbag. It was still better than them being thrown out of the car. Don't get me wrong. There still was some great things that happened with airbags. But a small child and or pet, even in a carrier, you got to make sure they're not in line for the airbag. Because when you're not looking, these accidents happen. These terrible things happen. So plan for the worst and assume that you're going to go have a great trip.
Wow, StreamYard just kicked me right out. And I was gone. Yeah. So what I wanted to say also is I've seen with children's child seat that the parent will have it behind the driver and the seats facing the back of the vehicle. Have you seen this?
Yeah, it's mostly with smaller children because you're going to get that skull that isn't even formed completely. You've got the opening still, all of this going on. Your animals are no different. So that's why a lot of times, like when I was traveling with my German Shepherd, now the truck was a whole different thing. It was strapped in, big sides, but with the van, he sat in the back also, because that way I could also box him in, because I didn't have any straps in those days, and make sure that it's not moving around. Because as a driver, is that what you want me to be paying attention to? What's happening in the back and in the truck and or the van or whatever? If you're in the teeny tiny little car, yeah, you don't got much to look at. And you probably only have one rear view mirror, where we in the bigger cars have very long ones. And nowadays for the vans, they take up almost the whole piece, so that the co-driver, the person sitting next to you, also can look back and not turn around, not unbuckle themselves. Because I can tell you how many times I've had to unbuckle myself just to buckle my kid back in because they figured out how. And that's not safe. And I'm telling my husband, please don't hit anything and don't let anybody hit you, because I'm crawling over the seat. and it's no different for your animals. What's wonderful about now is all the equipment you can get. There's so many choices.
Yes, there's so many. As technology increases and expands, there's more and more options.
Yeah.
So when we think about mental health for humans, we could seek help through self-help books. We could reach out to a coach or a mentor. We could go to a psychotherapist or a therapist. What about for pets who seem to be struggling with mental health issues? First of all, how would we identify that our pet is struggling mentally?
I think it's, for me, I'm going to explain how I would think that we'd all need. So I'm not all knowing, but for me also, I'm constantly looking at everything my cats do. We have 3. Because they don't talk to me as much as you think. Excuse me. Swallowed the dirt. And you're going to say, oh, does your toe hurt? Oh, does this? And they look at you like, meow. And unless you're going to take up that language, which I spent years going to school, going to this, working in sanctuaries, and watching what happens when the tail goes up and it's like a flag. Well, they're very interested in what they're doing. And again, you have to know your pet. Maybe this one means, I'm going to get pet and I'm going to go get them. There they go. Where when you see the fur go out on a cat, I think the dogs can do it pretty too, but the cats have typically longer hair. man, you better find out who scared it or who ticked it off, because that's a really, really big thing. Dr. Jacalyn, what do you think? Your hair, if you pushed your hair all the way out and you were a cat, what are you trying to say to the person?
You're afraid.
And I'm
Watch
bigger
out.
than I seem.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't get me because I'm going to go.
Right. Like a blowfish.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say next. We're just on a wonderful sync here. So blowfish, the same thing. They're not going to let that shark eat them if they can help. They got little spines and they go. And cats and dogs do the same. They get that fur out there, depending on if they have any lately. There's a lot of furless animals running around, but that's a whole different show. Just remember, if they're going to puff themselves out, they're afraid of something. And when's the most dangerous time to be around wildlife, your pets, maybe your family members? When is that, Dr. Jacalyn?
That's when they're afraid.
Exactly. We do the stupidest things. All of us, a whole planet worth, we do the stupidest things when we don't use our mind. Just go, well, wait a minute. Let me digest this. You're going to shoot me if I don't give you my money. Do I have it correctly? And maybe get everybody to de-escalate for whatever reason. Dogs, cats, all will defend themselves. And they get into more trouble with people saying, oh my God, he bit me. And what I'd like to say is, what happened before? What happened 2 seconds before they bit you? Let's get this in balance. If you didn't see that you just pulled off 3 inches of fur and it was extremely painful, of course they're going to turn around and try to get you to stop. And in an animal world, scratch, bite, wiggle away, yell at you, all of these things will happen, but they will fight for their life, much less their fur, because it's essential to their well-being.
Yeah, I mean, valid points. It's almost like when you have an argument with someone, what was your role in it?
Thank
Did
you.
you keep it from escalating? Did you put fuel in the fire? So many times people just go, it's his fault, it's her fault. And so what did you do to the animal? I remember my mother had a stray cat that she was actually taking care of, and the cat was living in the house, but then it would go out and do whatever. And it attacked her. But what happened was she walked up behind it and apparently scared it, and it turned around and it just stuck its jaw, just got a grip on it, and she was so mad at it. I was like, but what were you doing?
Exactly.
So
it's the hard reality. What did I do? It's true for every relationship. If it's 5 seconds you're around each other, or you got the boss from hell, what did you do? And what can you do to mediate that?
Yes.
Because we're only in charge of our own bodies and our own ways of doing things. And what we said, it's not that hard, believe it or not. Sometimes it's very humiliating, but it's not that hard to say, you know what? I did that bad. I did that wrong. Let's write this again. Now tell me what you needed, because I wasn't obviously listening well enough. Let's go again.
Yes.
And that's when you care about relationships. And I don't care if it's coworkers or a date or the grumpy neighbor down the street. Doesn't matter.
It's about listening. Exactly. That's what we practice here, elevated listening.
I was hoping you'd say that. And I was like, she's going to say it. I'm going to not say it. It's a great program.
For families, they have small children and they're thinking about getting a dog, for example. Is this a great idea? And if so, does it matter if it's a giant dog or a small dog? What are your thoughts?
Everything's personal. A child who is raised with animals, I personally believe, come out as a better human being. It would be the same thing if, let's say, you live 3 houses down from like the poorest people and on the street and everything, but you swore to your kids, oh no, don't go down there, don't go down there. And it's like, wait a minute, why? Well, because they could be. Well, then walk down with them, because they're your neighbors and maybe they're struggling. And you just threw out a whole casserole. And this is stuff that people who are needing to eat and get a job. I know when I was growing up, I was really fortunate to be the 5th child of 5 siblings. My three sisters, a brother doesn't count here. They all babysat the entire neighborhood. Everybody counted on my family having a sister available, but that doesn't mean I had to do it. That doesn't mean that was my given path, and or that I knew much about kids. I was the youngest. So remember where you're at. Be kind to what you can do and change it if you want something better. It's up to you. It's absolutely up to each one of us. If we want to change something, do what you need to do. Right now, the internet is fabulous. Why do you think we have our live show? So everybody can watch these at their will, wherever they are and whatever time zone they're in. There's so many first aid classes. That would be the first thing if you're dealing with children, is first aid. Because the first thing they will do is probably eat something they shouldn't, put something up their nose. I'll tell you, it's really hard to get out.
I love it. So it's a personal choice. And then, of course, the kids can also learn responsibility. Sometimes we hear that parents will get pets for their children and then they go, oh, I don't.
Exactly. Because they have to realize they're not capable of caring for them. And I don't care if it's fish, which everybody, I don't understand, but hamsters and fish. Well, these are like, when we were growing up, it was like the pet, right? It was small, it was easy, it was cheap. And usually I would ask a friend, so how's the hamster? Oh, it died. Okay, I heard that so many times. And then the fish. I tried to do fish forever and I decided goldfish, that's about as high as I should ever get.
Yes, well, I've shared before that I had 3 fish tanks at one time, and
how'd you like cleaning those?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot and it's expensive. So, and the other thing we've talked before about is that a dog is a commitment like a cat for many, many years.
Yep.
So if you, and I've heard this from people, they're going through a very stressful time of life, so now's a good time to get a pet. What do you think?
Okay, just think about all the words you just put together in a proper sentence. Is anybody out there who's calm and not a part of this being them saying it sound any logical at all? No, it doesn't. Animals can save your life. I've worked with guide dogs. I've worked with support animals, and these have saved these people's lives. Not only do they get some independence, they go for a walk when they have sight issues, whatever it is, they have a buddy with them all the time, and they can tell a bad person from a good person. But is that your trajectory or my trajectory? Train that or have that in our lives. I've talked about Jake many times. He's the purebred German Shepherd dumped in a backyard where we happened to have bought the house. And the septic tank was removed, so there was this ginormous, I couldn't even guess how big this hole was, but all his balls were down there, so he couldn't go get them. You got to understand that you're going in for the 10 years, the 15 years of life. Does it work out for everybody? No. I've had a train wreck of a cat once, and we did not fit with them. Our energy, the way the kids played was too rambunctious. And I had a friend who was a senior, and she said, oh, I would really love to have a cat. Would you ever consider giving him? I said, well, I think that's the best thing, because your calm one-person home is really what fits for him. Not a whole bunch of kids, and then the bunch of kids in front, there are a bunch of kids. Be kind to yourself. If you can make a better choice because the animal you adopted didn't turn out the way you thought, and that can happen with the best efforts of being prepared. Life happens when we're not looking and when we're looking. So be kind to yourself. Love the animal enough to find it a good home, if at all possible. Let's say you guys are at arguments and get off this and don't do this. Maybe just finding somebody who can come and take care of your pet for a couple of weeks and give you time to just take a breath and see where you guys are both at. It doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be essential unless lives are on the line. If you've got a cat that continuously scratches, bites anybody, much less an infant, that's when you start talking to a vet and saying, I really need to rehouse this, because small children should never have to be put in danger for any reason. I don't know about you, but we never had glasses when the kids were little. It's just not worth it to drop them on the floor. We don't wear shoes in the house. We have house shoes, of course, but we don't wear shoes in the house. So great. Now I have shattered glass everywhere. And Dr. Jacalyn, you know this too. You never, ever quite get every shard. I don't care how many times you clean. 2 weeks later, you see one sitting under the cabinet or something like that. And even if we had everybody wear shoes again, or got slippers for them in the house, I'd be worried about those little pieces. Because believe it or not, there are worms that will crawl into people's bodies and all that kind of stuff, and that's all it takes to kill somebody. A little shard of glass that gets infected really could be dangerous. So let's be proactive is what I really, really want everybody to hear. Be proactive. Try it out. If you can babysit somebody else's dog or cat or hamster or whatever you're looking at, how wonderful would that be? Now remember, if you're babysitting somebody else's animal, you got to get them to the other side of the babysitting part alive. But it'd be a great way to learn. That's for sure.
Absolutely. It's funny you said that because someone was here and broke a glass, and I just found like 3 weeks later a tiny shard. So it does happen. I have another question for you. We have a number of people from around the world who are possibly living in a multifamily dwelling. They're living in an apartment. So what are your thoughts if you have a small dog of using pee pads and not taking the dog out of the house, out of the apartment?
They are the new great stuff. I have seen it used so well. It worked. I remember the first time I was working with a client and they got the big giant ones, even though the dog wasn't that big, but they didn't want it going over. They didn't want it sprinkling around. And then they have to train the dog, because any other time they can walk them outside, they could pick up the poop and all that, but there's rainy days or, I'm talking about a client that lived back east in the United States. And so there was going to be a bad weather day half the time. And that's not always. You got to put the jacket on and then they got to poop or pee through it. So she came up with a plan of putting the pee pads down and then picking them up right away. So it's not a constant urination thing, but you have to know your pet. This is what works for her. I'm advocating that you can do something, and the pads are wonderful. And they mimic the ones they use in the hospital where, people can't get up and they're having surgery and so they can't get up. Just be aware it doesn't hold a wide range of liquid. It's finite. There's just the pee they got. So please realize it can get expensive if you just pad after pad after pad after pad. And you can't wash them. You've got to throw them away. So we are creating more trash. So be careful on your use of it. Let's say you only use it on vacations when you're in hotels or something like that. Try not to make it an everyday thing. With that said, there are always side caveats. And what I'm thinking is, let's say you are handicapped and or elderly, and somebody handicapped that doesn't need a service animal, just wants a cute cat rolled up in their lap or whatever. It's great for healing of any kind. Then you're going to need to go through quite a few pee pads probably. But I would rather you have love in your life and somebody to care for that really helps you mentally, physically, and the planet than worry about quite as many pee pads. I'd like to see everybody teach their pets to go in a litter box. It's possible. It comes in so many types of, not just sand and bark and this and that kind of stuff that you can try. And their boxes now come in 100 million sizes with pictures on them and can back up to a window or a door or whatever. There are choices. I would rather see you loved unconditionally, and that's what animals do. They love you unconditionally, no matter how much you smell. I've heard it.
Oh, very nice. And what about taking your animal with you. I see dogs. I don't see a lot of cats or other creatures. And I see a lot of signs now in shopping centers that they have to be dogs that are support dogs, really. And
Right.
sometimes I don't know what determines a support animal. I know you have to fill out some paperwork probably.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts about taking your loved one with you when you're out and about?
If it is your health and your mental balance, because illnesses can be mental, can be physical, they can be a million things. And it happened years ago, and Dr. Jacalyn, you might have run into it, but I know I did, where people were actually accosted in the grocery store. I'm talking about 15, 20, more than 20 years ago. And they had, the belt was on and it said, "I'm a service animal, please don't pet me." That's a really common one right now because people just don't seem to know that's a dog and you can pet it. No, you can't. You have to ask for permission. It's like, you want to pet my kid? No, you can't do that either. But service animals are life-saving. Service animals are trained to be there when you have that epileptic fit or when you faint and you need somebody to realize. They'll start barking. They'll start doing all kinds of things. They can lick your face off and try to reanimate you. There are so many things. These dogs are not only for the blind, and now we have for so many illnesses. When you are about to faint, I don't know if you've ever felt this, Dr. Jacalyn. I know I had low blood pressure for years until I realized how to manage it. But I was always fainting. Luckily, I only hit the ground a couple times because I got really good at going, "Oh, I don't feel so good," and I'd sit down. Your guide dog will help with your path and get you through the grocery store better than anybody besides the cart. But they'll also know when your temperature has changed, when your medical situation has changed, and they will pull on your shirt. That's how they're trained to get you on the ground. Because fainting can be life-threatening for everybody. Depends on where you fall. In the middle of a sidewalk, where you fall off, the middle of a crossing, and all the cars don't see you, it can be very tragic. Guide dogs are absolutely fabulous with this. Service animals are amazing when they're trained properly and the owner understands, because they put the person that's getting the animal through a lot of training, because you got to know how to ask for what you need.
Yes, you have to know what you want and know how to ask for what it is. So
Exactly.
lots of really good things to think about. I think something else I would like to just discuss is, and I've done this myself, you get one dog and you are leaving home to go to work or whatever. You can't bring your dog, so you get another dog
Mm-hmm.
to keep the first dog company. Thoughts about that?
I can see it in the way you've stated it and hear from you. It's a big decision. I don't care. I've seen the fabulous pictures of your two wonderful little ones, and that just means they were little dogs. They weren't letting all that fuzz and it's so good for their mental health. There are, and this used to be really rare, but it's really common. I don't know if people are still doing it. I haven't checked in with anybody, but they have records. Now we're kind of past the record part, but you can get Apple. And what is this little device that you have music on it? You can put it in on a slow tier. There's a million ways to get your hands on, or you can turn on the radio and go to the slow channel. And your animals will really appreciate having that live feel in the room. If your animals are able to be at home alone and not eat the couch and not poop in the kitchen, then that is really great. And sometimes those animals do well because they say, "Oh, mom, dad's gone at 7 a.m. and whoop, here we go, 3 in the afternoon, and they're here." They won't like it when you're late. Let me just tell you, with the dogs, they weren't going to like it. Like cats, maybe too. But it's something you can teach and something that they then count on So if you're planning an extra long trip for the groceries after work or whatever, it can happen. And your animal will adjust eventually, depending on their personality, depending on the training that's put in, on what they will tolerate. So just know that. It's really, really great if you're going to have pets at home to have camera. Have cameras. Just think, if you do get burglarized, then you got them on film. But what's nice is they have a microphone through so many of these cameras that you can talk to your kids, your fluffy ones or human ones, and say, hey, I told you no cake after school. And your kid goes, oh, mom, oh, dad. And it brings that your voice into their day, and it kind of freaks the animal out in the beginning. They're like, wait a minute, where? I've actually seen, I had a client that videotaped it. Their dog was just running over the whole house because they had about 4 or 5 different speakers. And it was hilarious. Now, they told the dog where they were, and they were usually just a step outside because they didn't want him to freak out. So I'm not advocating let's torture the pet, but them knowing that you're coming in any minute or any of that kind of stuff. Just wish they could clean up the house before you get there, right?
Yeah, that would be nice. And by the way, some of these, the daycare centers, you can take your pets. I know way back when I had my dogs, I took them to daycare center. At the time, they didn't have cameras in there, but now I'm sure you can actually zoom into some kind of portal and you can see how they're doing. So doggy daycare is also great. And there's also people who can come to your home and take care of your pets also, so they're getting enough attention, because as we know, that also can impact their mental health and their happiness.
Absolutely. And you have to think about it, no, they're not people, but they have the right to be treated with the love and time with you that you should do with important relationships. Don't get a pet if you're planning just to leave it. It's not a cactus. I promise you, even the cactus need water.
Mm-hmm.
So, you always think, oh, it's not that. It's not that. It is that, because you can change lives by just taking your dog for a walk. When I had German Shepherd, I took my kids a lot to the recovery centers and the senior centers. And it was just fabulous because my dog was big enough to put his feet on the bed with permission so that they could pet him and they didn't have to get out of bed. It was really good for my kids to see that. So I had them participate in, making sure the Jake was brushed and answered any questions they needed. I didn't want my kids to be afraid of the hospital like I was. I was terrified the first time I had to have surgery. And sadly, I went on to have 5 more before I was 12. So I didn't want my kids to have any of that kind of stuff if I could. And what's the better way than bring a dog? And then my daughter started showing rabbits. We brought the bunny. And you know how these faces glow? And you got it's not little, but little enough for us, bunny to hold. And it just made all these people who were just watching TV and soap operas all day long at the time, or at least it looked like it every time we were there, and they got to hold a warm, fuzzy animal. And I can't tell you how many times the people there wanted to hug the girls. And they're like, do we have to do that? And I was like, no, you don't have to do that. But it's sure nice having that human contact, much less a small child, because the girls would have been 11 and down from there.
Absolutely. We all need a hug every now and then, and to know that we're loved and that we're special and we're important. Exactly. And Pet Psychic Aminah, you're very important and very special. We're closing out our show for today. What's the best way for someone to reach out to you, and who would be a great client for you?
I can't say everybody, and we'll figure that out, but I'd love it to be everybody. bridgingworlds.us is my website. And I try to put everything there. You'll see these shows way back when and the current, and you will hear more free advice of things that I post. I have stepped back a little bit on social media just because it just gets overwhelming after a while, and I will get back on there. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook specifically because I do so much that is so important to me with Dr. Jacalyn, that YouTube has really taken over where I'm going to leave the most helpful tips, I hope, because she's got the right questions. We've built this relationship and this partnership. So anything you want to know, hopefully you'll come and look through StreamYard. There's just a lot of really good information, not just from me. She has an entire channel of other people that are doing wonderful things too. But YouTube is a great resource, not just for myself, but there's so many professionals. I'd rather you get help than worry about who you got the help from. Unless it's toxic and you'll know it, step away and get a different trainer, get a different helper. There's so many professional people out there looking to help you.
I love that. Thank you so much. And just a bit of news for you, which you may not be aware of, but our show on saltwater fish, I think it was last week, it's in the last 3 weeks, is #1 of the top shows of all of our shows for the last 28 days.
You would never guess that. I never guessed that.
I'll be posting it on social media later this weekend, and I'll tag you so that you know it. So you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. And please do stay tuned for royal breaking news from London, which is coming up next. And Pet Psychic Am and I will be back next Friday.
Absolutely. So let's be safe out there.
Yeah, be safe, everyone. Thanks so much. We're going to hear from some of our sponsors, and we wish you a beautiful day. We'll be back with our next show, as I just mentioned. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
We face daily cyber risks, spending over 7 hours of screen time, including 4.5 hours on mobile phones. This convenience comes with significant dangers, with cybercrime costs predicted to exceed $10.5 trillion by 2025. In 2023 alone, seniors lost over $3.4 billion to cybercrime. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, senior living facilities, investment companies, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We offer real-life examples to help you recognize and prevent attacks, with sessions available both in person, in selected regions, and remotely. Schedule your training session, or to learn more, contact us today. Call us at 847-845-9360. Email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com. Protect your team and family with cybersecurityeasy.com.
My name is Dr. Felix Kravitz, and I am the founder of cybersecurityeasy.com, LLC. We live in a world full of vulnerabilities and cyber risks. We spend almost 4.5 hours a day on our mobile phones. It's over 7 hours of screen time daily when including computer use. We often forget that this convenience comes with risks. Published data predicts that the cost of cybercrime will exceed $10.5 trillion in 2025. These numbers encompass not only businesses, but also each one of us, including our children and our parents. In 2023, the FBI reported over $3.4 billion lost by seniors aged 60 and older. Cybersecurityeasy.com LLC's initiative is to massively support the community by providing cyber safety coaching and improving social engineering awareness. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, seniors, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We cover various topics, from phone phishing attacks to AI-generated voice cloning, robocalls, password protection, and more, using life examples. Talk to us today. Call us at 847-845-9360 or email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com.